Now, we have a lot to straighten out about the sexual relationships between men and women in the modern world. They're bent and warped and demented out of shape. One of the things I see with young people, for example, is that they will engage in sexual acts with one another that they would not talk about with one another. I mean, couples will do that for that matter, like married couples will do that, but they're married, that's a different story. It seems to me that if you are willing to engage in a sexual act with someone with whom you would not discuss that act, you probably put the cart before the horse, you know, because the old answer was get married. That's a good answer, and it's an answer that people should still listen to, but we'll put that aside momentarily. I had a client at one point who was, I don't know, she was probably, I'm going to disguise her in a variety of different ways. She was 27, 20 thereabouts, had come from a relatively conservative background, quite a timid, fearful person, and also not very well, not sophisticated in relationships. And she'd never had sex. Well, there's a bunch of things she'd never done. Well, the answer from me to her wasn't continue to be timid about everything, because that wasn't working out for her. She needed to go have some adventures. Now, sexual adventures, like other adventures, are dangerous. And so you have to be very careful when you encourage people to go out and have adventures. But too much timidity and caution also constitutes a pathway to perdition, let's say. You can't just say to people in the modern world, well, no sex till you're married, unless you're going to get married when you're very young, and perhaps you should. I don't know about that, but I don't think that we're mature enough as a culture to have a serious discussion about sexual propriety, especially in the aftermath of the birth control pill. Now, I talked a little bit today about the utility of marriage, like the spiritual utility of marriage, and that's something that I think we're so immaturely cynical as a culture. Like we're not wise enough to look at an institution like marriage and to really think about what it means and what it signifies. It signifies a place that people can tie the ropes of their lives together so that they're stronger. It signifies a place where people can tell the truth to one another. It signifies a place where sexuality can properly be integrated into life. That's no easy task. It's a place where children, at least in principle, can be put first and foremost, as they should be once they exist. And so there's a much broader discussion that has to happen, I think.
Please give your perspective on why polyamory is bad for the individual and society. Well, I think the fundamental reason is, there's a bunch of reasons. I mean, the first is societies seem to function better, that is, less violently. Let's say, when there's one woman per man, if there's many women per man, there aren't many women for every man. There are a handful of men, let's say a minority of men, a Pareto distribution of men who have a disproportionate number of women, and a lot of men who have none. And those aren't happy men, let's put it that way. They're men who are very likely to get up to no good very rapidly. So there's that. Then I would say the women who, let's say a man has many women, and let's say he's a desirable man for that matter, just for the sake of argument, if he has a variety of women, then those women don't have much of him. So they don't get to establish a real individual relationship with him because it's going to be fragmentary. And I don't believe that that's satisfying for people. I think that what you want, as much as you possibly can, is to have people around you with whom you can weave your life together over the short term, medium term, and long term. It adds depth to your life in a way that almost nothing else can. And so what you do, and so I've been speaking more about permanent polyamorous relationships. You might ask, well, what about sequential ones where, you know, which is in some ways indiscriminable from, from just casual sleeping around. I think the problem with that is that to sleep around casually is to imply that sex is casual. To imply that sex is casual is to assume implicitly that it can be divorced from the rest of life, emotional life, motivational life, values, all of that. And you can divorce it, but you pay a big price for that. I think the price you pay is like the virtual. Well, the word psychopathic keeps leaping to mind. You have to reduce a person to the casual pleasure of a transient sexual interaction in order to sleep around casually. And I think that once you establish that as a habit with sex, which is a deep experience, if you'll do that with sex, which is a deep experience, then, and you learn how, then what makes you think that won't transfer to everything else that you do? I don't see how it can fail to. So, you could say, well, monogamy isn't a very good solution. It's like, well, life is a sexually transmitted disease with a 100% fatality rate too. There's lots of really complex problems for which we only have the best answer we can come up with, which is not a utopian answer, but I would say, and I think the evidence supports this as well, that stable monogamy is the best solution that we know of, and it's also the minimum necessary requirement for the stability of children. So, polyamory, it's wrong. It's wrong. It makes men violent. It increases inequality in the manner that makes things dangerous. It makes it impossible for women to have a deep relationship with men. It facilitates the, the transformation of sex into something casual, and then that spills out into the rest of the world. It deprives the people who engage in it of the opportunity of establishing a stable, long-term, mutually satisfying. It's more than that. Mutually beneficial relationship. Because a good marriage, the people in it gain more than, they're more than twice as good, right? The benefits aren't precisely linear. So you lose that, it destabilizes the situation for children. There you go, man. That's a lot of things that aren't good. That's for sure.